Hey guys, this is Pastor John. I'm going to try to put up a couple of videos, maybe one every day if I can, to just kind of keep in touch and just find a way of, if we can't physically be in person, just have a point of contact throughout the week. And so it probably won't be every single day. I'm at home with my girls, and we have a lot of energy at our house, and it is tough to get this kind of stuff done in quiet. You can tell I had to come here to the office to take care of this. But today is Wednesday, the 18th, and we had that earthquake this morning. And with the coronavirus going on, earthquake, you could totally see this coming because it happens whenever there's something big that's going on. But you can absolutely expect, maybe you've already heard people talking about how these are part of the signs of Jesus' second coming, of the end of the world, of the end of days. And I just want to take a couple minutes and address that. And usually when people talk about this, they've got one foot rooted in Daniel and the other foot rooted in Revelation. Those are probably two of their go-to or favorite books. And those are both they're books of a certain kind of literature called apocalyptic literature, which was very popular for about a 500-year, 600-year period from about 400 BC to about 1 or 200 AD. And that, what we often talk about is the intertestamental period. And apocalyptic literature was meant to be read in a certain way, and it wasn't meant to be read literally. It was meant to be an allegory. So there was meaning behind everything there that was below the surface or the literal meaning. And these kinds of books of literature and the apocalyptic literature tend to come from periods of time when there's a lot of distress, a lot of persecution, stress, anxiety, uncertainty about the future, and a lot of pain. Daniel is one of the later books of the Bible that we're not entirely sure when it was written. It's one of the few books of the Bible that are written in two different languages. It has Hebrew and Aramaic as well. Probably sometime after the exile, which I remember the Babylonians came in around 586, 587 BC, and probably written sometime during the Hellenistic period to the Greek period. So there was a couple of different rulers. Actually, there was lots. Some people think up to 200 different military campaigns and conquests during that 400 or 500 year period. So it was a really tumultuous time. The Jews were in the mix, in the middle of being tossed about by the waves of global superpowers that were coming in and taking over and engaging that part of the world on their way from one to the other. And so they were experiencing being conquered constantly, and they had this little brief period of independence when a family called the Maccabees helped lead a revolution, and then the Romans came in, and it has been occupation from then until 1946 or 1947, whenever it was that Israel was established as an independent nation. Revelation. So on one hand, you've got Daniel, which is the apocalyptic book, the big apocalyptic book in the Hebrew Bible, and then the big apocalyptic book in the New Testament is Revelation. Revelation was written during the time of the Christian persecution by Rome. And so it also has lots of allusions and allegorical imagery and pictures given, not meant to be read literally, interpreted literally, but again, metaphorically and allegorically. I don't want to denigrate those who come from this perspective. I just think that trying to read the sign of the times and using things that are happening, earthquakes or viruses or things in the government or the stock market or what's going on in Europe or the UN or whatever thing like that is just kind of a misguided effort, and it's something that people have been doing for a long time. And sometimes you wonder if we should have learned this lesson by now, mainly because Jesus himself said, don't do this. And that's what I want to talk to you about. And so in all three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus talks about this very thing. And so specifically, I'm going to give you a couple chapters here. Starting with Mark 13, because Matthew and Luke use Mark as a source. than Matthew 24 and Luke 21. So you can go for yourself and you can read those, and they're pretty similar stories. If you read through those, there's a little bit of variation here and there, but the essence of them are pretty much spot on. And I'm going to lift up Matthew's because I think it illustrates the point best. And so in Matthew 24, it starts out with Jesus talking about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which happened, it ended up happening in AD 70, right? So this is like Jesus before it happened, foreshadowing, looking towards it. And the disciples take that to mean basically the end of the world. When the temple is destroyed, that's it. Everything's coming to an end. And so they say, tell us when these things will be. What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered them. So that's it. They want to know, what are the signs? See that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. Interesting. All these are but the beginning of the birth pangs. If anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, look, he's out in the wilderness, don't go. If they say to you, look, he's in the inner room, don't believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man. Basically, you're not going to miss it. Just like you can see the lightning cross the sky, and nobody misses that. Even if you're in a room, you still see the flash, you're going to know. And then immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, that all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, which is almost direct quote from Daniel. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from the one end of heaven to the other. So this is after, the recognition that you're going to see him coming. You're not going to have to guess. And then he says, but concerning that day and hour, nobody knows. Not even the angels in heaven, not even the Son, only the Father. For, and then he uses a biblical intertextual reference here, for as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating, they were drinking, they were doing their thing, they were marrying, giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark, and they were unaware until that flood came and swept them away. They were surprised. That's the point there. Nobody saw it coming. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be left in the field. So this gets into that, one will be taken and one will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill. 1 will be taken and 1 left. And, people read a lot into this. And I think a lot of that is misguided. That's for another video. But he says, therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, if the master of the house had known what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake, would not have let the house be broken into. And here's the point. Therefore be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. And then just a couple verses later in Matthew 24, he reiterates, he says, about that day and hour, nobody knows, not the angels in heaven, nor the Son, nor the Father. So Luke also talks about this so Luke has his gospel, and then he has the book of Acts. They're kind of like volume 1 and 2. And Luke records Jesus after the resurrection and right before the ascension, saying something very similar to this. And so I wanted to get this to you too. This is from Acts 1, starting in verse 6. So when the disciples and Jesus had come together, they asked him, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? Basically, is heaven going to come down? Is everything going to, is this going to be the end of days? Or when will be? And he said to them, it's not for you to know the times or the seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority, but you will receive the power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the end of the earth. right? So it's not for you to know the time. You're going to receive power to go out and do the work. Don't worry about the time, the timing, figuring it out. Your job is to go out and do the job that I've been given, that I'm giving you. And when he said these things, and this is really funny, as they were looking on, Jesus is lifted up. This is what we call the ascension. And a cloud took him out of their sight. And while they were gazing into heaven as he went, you can just see him kind of watching, as he kind of disappears. Behold, two men stood by them in white robes. And they said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into heaven? Jesus, who is taken from you into heaven, will come in the same way as you saw him go. Again, they're just reiterating, what are you doing looking at? You're not going to have to, use special binoculars to see. You're going to know when he returns. Don't worry about it. You've been given a job. Go do your job. And there are lots of other places where the day will come like a thief in the night comes up. 1 Thessalonians 5, Paul talks about it. Peter in 2 Peter 3, he talks about it. It's just this kind of theme that runs through the whole scriptures. The point was always keep awake, keep alert, keep to the task at hand, the call to which you've been given. Don't get sidetracked by looking for signs of the times. You will know when it happens. Everybody will know when it happens. It's not going to be a secret. Speculating on the signs is only going to amp up your anxiety and get in the way of doing the job that you've been given. So today in particular, with the craziness that's been going on in the world for the last couple weeks and month, and then this little earthquake that we had, don't get anxious about trying to read the sign of the times here. Don't get your anxiety all ramped up. This is a time to continue to do the work that we've been given, to be salt and light to the earth. And that's going to be my prayer for you, that you don't let other people ramp you up. Say, oh, look, he's out there in the wilderness, or he's in the inner room. Jesus said, don't listen to him. You keep doing what you've been called to do. So that's my word for you today, and I hope that this helps kind of ease some of your anxiety. It does for me to know that it's not our job to try to figure it out. Let's not even try. Let's just keep doing our job. Let's keep our head down. Let's keep serving the kingdom of heaven. That's what Christ wants us to be doing. He tells this parable in Matthew 24, right after the section that we read, about a master who goes away and puts a slave in charge. And he said, which one's the faithful one? When the master returns, he finds him hard at work, doing the things that he was supposed to. Or when the master comes home, he finds the slave was beating the other ones, was eating and drinking and having a good time. He said, yeah, it's the one who was hard at work, doing the job that he'd been given. You don't know when the master is going to return. We do know what we're supposed to do. So let that be our call today. Amen.